Now, before we start telling you about VoiParty, let's tell you who we're not, okay? Let's get that confusion out of the way. People hear our name, VoiParty, and immediately they think voice over IP. Oh, that's like one of these companies, Comcast, whoever. Listen, VoiParty is not just another VoIP provider. We are creating a revolutionary new type of telecommunications network architecture. To put it into perspective, imagine, let's take you back a century, 100 years. Imagine the year 1899. A gentleman by the name of Alexander Bell comes to talk to you about a new invention he's made. And he wants you to buy a telephone pole from him, and he tells you that people are going to be talking over wires, and it's going to make all this money, and he's going to pay you for every minute of phone call that's going to be carried by that telephone pole for life. Of course, you would have told him he was crazy. However, if you knew then what you know now, would you have bought one of those telephone poles? I'm betting that the answer is yes. And that's exactly the opportunity that we're talking to you about here today. Because what VoiParty is doing is creating a new type of network where the telephone poles literally fit in the palm of your hand. VoiParty is the world's first peer-to-peer inter-exchange network. Now, unless you're an experienced telecommunications professional, you're not going to know what that means. But let's give you first a little background on VoiParty, and then we'll tell you what inter-exchange is all about. The VoiParty was formed in 2005 with the express purpose of turning a brilliant idea into reality. We discovered a basic flaw in how inter-exchange companies did business due to the use of something called least cost routing software, and how we could exploit that industry standard to capture as much revenue as we wanted in the inter-exchange business. Over the past 4 years, we have invested countless resources and thousands of man-hours to create the technology that has allowed us to deploy this world's first peer-to-peer inter-exchange network. So what is inter-exchange? Well, that's going to require a little bit of a history lesson. So let's take you back to the year 1984. Prior to that, there was no inter-exchange. AT&T had a monopoly. It was one company. But the federal government took care of that when they broke up the AT&T monopoly and created the 7 regional Bell operating companies that became known as Incumbent Local Exchange Carriers, or ILECs. And that's an acronym that we use for time to time, so you might want to type that down. ILEC is Incumbent Local Exchange Carrier. Now, one of the first revenue streams these companies discovered was something called carrier access billing. Now that they were separate companies, they were able to bill each other for access to their networks. So what they did is basically charge like a toll fee for letting their competitors access their network. So at that time, they were able to generate revenues by the minute every time a call came into their network. Now, during the same time, creative engineers at companies like Telna and Covista started experimenting with a little-known technology called VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol. And what they discovered is that they could go to carriers and buy lines at different ILECs. Then using VoIP, they could literally create a route between the two ILECs and sell the route back to the ILECs, and that was the birth of wholesale inter-exchange. It was a much lower cost way to transmit a call, because if the carriers had to send the calls directly to each other, they'd be forced to pay the federally set tariffs, interstate communications taxes, FCC taxes, and all the other charges that had been set when the breakup was first agreed to. During the last 15 years following the breakup, there was an explosion in the amount of wholesale inter-exchange carriers and telephony service providers in the U.S. In fact, so many grew out of that breakup because of their competitive advantages that it spawned a new industry, and that industry was the master agents or aggregators. And what these folks did is aggregate all the small carriers into a single point of contact where then the larger carriers could implement automation and the use of least cost routing software. That brings us back to the point we touched on at the beginning. So how does least cost routing work? If AT&T has to send calls to Verizon, conversationally speaking, during the month they would spend $150 million in interconnection fees. Instead, they're going to look for a lower cost route in their network, available to their network, and they're going to go over to XO, one of the largest inter-exchange carriers, and it's going to save them a considerable amount of money to get that call to the same destination. Well, along comes VoiParty with this new technology that enables us to reduce our costs to virtually nothing, and we can provide that same route at an even larger discount and getting to capture as much traffic in the process as we want. So why do these guys want to reduce their expenses? Well, take a look at their 2008 operating expenses, and perhaps it'll give you an idea of just how much money there is in interconnection. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars. One company alone, AT&T, spent $88.6 billion. This is serious money, folks. And even the inter-exchange carriers, with all their competitive advantages, their expenses were nothing to sneeze at either. We're talking tens of millions of dollars to hundreds of millions of dollars to $1.5 billion for XO, the largest of the inter-exchange carriers. Even the telephone poles on their networks cost billions of dollars to maintain. The telephone poles on our network fit in the palm of your hand, and they can't be blown over by a storm. Their overhead and infrastructure runs into the billions of dollars. AT&T alone spent $2.7 billion just on lease facilities. Our lease facilities are our members' homes. Our internet bandwidth, telecom equipment, everything we need to run our network is all paid for and maintained by the companies that give our members internet service and telephone service. This is a huge advantage for the VoiParty network. We are literally interconnecting every major carrier one telephone pole at a time. And this is going to allow us to recreate our own public switch telephone network and have the lowest cost route between all the carriers, capturing as much of that revenue as we want. Now, over the past 4 years, in addition to developing the technology to create this network, we've established relationships with the major master exchanges, and combined this group controls 100 billion minutes per month. Now, when we capture our 10 to 15% of that traffic, that's going to translate into $70 to $90 million per month in revenue, of which 70% is paid to the network. That's the best part of this opportunity. The sales are already done. All we need to do now is deploy the telephone poles to capture the traffic and capture that revenue. And that's where you guys come in. We're deploying 1.3 million telephone poles to build the largest coverage area in North America. Now, people who come in after that will be able to participate in phase 3, which is our retail, but that's not the purpose of this presentation. We're here to talk to the people who are going to own the telephone poles, the members who are going to own this network, both here and internationally, where there'll be much, much more room than 1.3 million, but we're starting in the U.S. In fact, after our recent launch in Florida, in just a few short months, we're already in 35 states and growing extremely fast. Because of the limited space in this opportunity, we feel that over the next 12 to 24 months, we're going to close out phase 2 and build this largest coverage area in North America to capture that revenue. But you got to get in now, because we're using a tool called direct sales, folks, and regardless of what you say about direct sales, it works. $105 billion globally, and it has grown 80% in the last decade, which explains our explosive growth. But there is a problem with a lot of these companies. Most of them don't have a very high success rate. In fact, 90% of the people that get involved in direct sales lose money. And we studied why, and mostly it's because of some of the problems that we identified on this next slide. See, most direct sales companies, you can't join with just a one-time investment. They all require you to have recurring fees, that is, to spend money every month on a product or service or consume something in order to generate money for the network. You have to have minimum spending requirements just to qualify for bonuses. And so when we asked these questions, we found that only one company could meet all these requirements. Get in with a one-time investment, no recurring monthly fees, no perks by, no minimum spending, and have the ability to make a six-figure income. Folks, only VoiParty can give you that opportunity. And why? It's because we make our revenue off the people who don't get in the network. If you're a Verizon customer, for instance, and you call someone who's not a Verizon customer, you're generating interconnection fees, and we're going to make money off you. And if you're an AT&T customer, and you call someone who's not an AT&T customer, we're going to make money off of you. Doesn't matter that you're not in our network, we're making revenue. All we're doing here tonight, folks, is an offer to our members to own a piece of this network. Get yourself one of these telephone poles, connect it in your home, and we're going to share all the revenue we capture off the non-members with the members. And the money is incredible. We're going to talk about that now. But first, here's all you need to get started. Your VoiParty connection device is $199 one-time investment and a $29.95 annual membership fee. That's it. The annual membership pays for your website, your back office, all the accounting software and tools that you'll need to run your business. In addition to that, you'll need a high-speed internet connection and a local phone line with local calling access. If you're currently paying for a long-distance plan, get rid of it because you're going to get free USA and Canada long-distance with your VoiParty connection device.